Aryan had always dreamed of seeing the stars up close, but he never imagined he would find himself standing in a place that felt more like a dream than reality. His small exploration shuttle had landed on a wide clearing, surrounded by tall trees that glowed faintly even in the daylight. The air was warm, soft, and filled with scents he could not name. It was unlike anything he had known on Earth. For a long moment, Aaron just stood outside his shuttle, staring in every direction. The sky above him shimmered with faint colors as if the atmosphere itself held a rainbow trapped inside. The trees were massive, their leaves carrying a faint shine as if dusted with starlight. And then, in the distance, he noticed the river. It flowed quietly through the forest, but its waters glowed. Soft shades of blue, green, and silver shimmered across the surface, lighting up the ground around it. Aaron felt as though he had stepped into another world, where every detail whispered a secret of beauty and mystery. He took a slow breath, letting the wonder settle in his chest. "This is it," he whispered to himself. The bioluminescent forest. He had read reports from earlier explorers who had scanned this planet, but words on a screen had never carried the magic that his eyes now saw. This was not just a forest. It was a living ocean of light. Aaron pulled out a small scanner from his belt and began his work. He was here to observe, to collect data, to understand how life worked in this strange place. Yet as he walked further into the glowing woods, he found himself slowing down. His steps grew quieter, his breathing calmer. For the first time in a long time, Aaron did not feel like a visitor with duties. He felt like a person who had stumbled into a story. As night began to fall, the true beauty of the forest revealed itself. When the last light of the sun faded, the trees came alive. The trunks glowed with faint lines of golden light winding upward like veins. The leaves turned into tiny lanterns shimmering softly in the wind. The ground itself carried faint patterns of light, like stars scattered beneath his feet. Aaron stood in silence, unable to move. He had seen cities lit by neon signs. He had seen Earth's oceans shine under the moonlight, but this was different. This was nature itself glowing with life. Every step he took revealed new colors, soft pinks, deep violets, warm amber shades. The forest looked alive as if it were breathing light, and yet beneath all the beauty, Aaron felt something heavy inside. He was alone. Explorers often carried loneliness with them, but Aaron had thought he was ready for it. He had convinced himself that the mission was worth the silence. But now, surrounded by such wonder, he felt the weight of solitude even more. What good was this beauty if he had no one to share it with? His heart ached with that thought. He sat near the glowing river, watching the water dance with silver light. The gentle sound calmed him, but the emptiness in his chest did not fade. He remembered the people he had left behind, friends, his family, voices that would not echo here. The forest gave him peace, but not warmth. It gave him beauty, but not company. Hours passed as Aaron studied the forest, writing notes on his tablet, recording the glow, the sounds, the patterns. He tried to distract himself with science, but his heart was restless. Every time he looked up, he wished someone else was sitting beside him, marveling at the same lights. It was then, in the deep of the night, that he noticed something strange. The glow of the forest had a rhythm, a gentle pulse that matched the breeze. But among the natural light, Aaron saw something different, a faint movement, a soft glow that seemed to be walking, not swaying with the trees. He froze, his eyes fixed on the shadows. At first, he thought it was an animal, maybe some kind of glowing creature moving through the woods. But the shape was too smooth, too tall, too graceful. The glow came not just from one point, but from several, as if flowing across a figure. Aaron's heart began to race. He leaned closer, trying not to make a sound. The figure moved again, stepping between the glowing trees, its light shifting with each motion. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The forest seemed to quiet around him as though holding its breath. Aaron whispered to himself, "Someone's here." The glow moved closer, faint but steady, and Aaron felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. He knew he should return to his shuttle, report the presence of intelligent life, and follow protocol. But his feet did not move. His heart urged him to stay. He remained by the river waiting. The glow lingered at a distance, almost curious, almost cautious. Aaron could not see a face, only the outline of a being that seemed to carry the forest's own light upon its skin. Then slowly it disappeared into the trees, fading like a dream. Aaron sat in silence long after it was gone. His mind told him to mark the event, to record every detail. But his heart only repeated one thought. I'm not alone. The forest glowed gently around him, but it no longer felt empty. Something was out there, someone, and for the first time since landing, Aaron felt his loneliness soften. The bioluminescent forest, once only a wonder of light, now carried a new secret. A secret that made him long to return tomorrow night. The next morning, Aaron woke to the soft hum of his shuttle's systems. His mind was still restless, replaying the strange vision of the night before. He had seen something, no, someone in the forest. The glow had not been like the trees or the river. It had moved with intention, with grace, like a living person. He rubbed his face and stared out the shuttle window at the shining woods. The bioluminescent glow was weaker under the morning light, but the memory of last night burned brightly in his thoughts. He felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Was it real, or had his mind created it out of loneliness? Aaron strapped on his gear and stepped outside. The morning air was fresh, carrying a faint sweetness, almost like honey mixed with rain. The trees whispered softly as the wind passed through them. He decided he would return to the same riverbank that evening. If there was someone or something he wanted to know. The day passed in steady work. He took soil samples, studied the glowing plants, and measured the strange humming sound the rivers sometimes gave off. But his focus was weak. Every time a branch moved, he looked up. Every time the forest glowed a little brighter, he thought of the figure. Hours felt long, and the waiting stretched his patience thin. When night fell again, the forest revealed its true face. The trunks of the trees shimmered with golden threads. The leaves glowed like floating lanterns, and the river turned silver blue under the stars. Aaron sat near the same spot as before, his heart beating with anticipation. For a while, nothing happened. He almost convinced himself it had been a dream. But then, as the wind grew softer, he saw it again. The glow. It appeared between two tall trees, faint at first, then clearer. A figure slowly walked closer, cautious yet steady. Aaron's breath caught. The shape was tall, slender, and graceful. The glow came from markings across the figure's body, patterns that shifted like streams of light. Aaron did not move. He did not want to frighten the being away. The figure stepped closer, and the glow revealed more detail. It was a person, clearly different from a human, yet not terrifying. The being's skin carried natural patterns that shone softly, like veins of light flowing beneath the surface. The eyes glimmered faintly, reflecting the glow of the forest. The hair, long and flowing, carried a faint shimmer too, as if the forest's own light rested within it. Aaron felt his throat dry. His instincts told him to speak, but he feared his voice might break the moment. He raised his hand slowly, showing his palm in a gesture of peace. The figure paused, tilting its head. Then, with slow movements, it stepped closer until it stood across the glowing river. Aaron finally found his voice. "Hello," he whispered. The figure's eyes focused on him. For a moment there was silence, only the gentle sound of water flowing between them. Then softly the figure spoke. The voice was smooth, musical, carrying a rhythm that felt almost like singing. Aaron did not understand the words, but he felt no threat in them. The being's tone carried curiosity, not anger. Aaron placed his hand on his chest. "Aaron," he said, pointing to himself. The being blinked, tilting its head again, then repeated softly, "Aaron." The sound of his name on that voice made his heart race. Aaron smiled nervously and pointed at the figure. "You?" he asked. The being hesitated, then touched its chest lightly. "Nira." The name carried a gentle glow, as if the forest itself whispered it. Aaron repeated Nira, testing the sound carefully. The being, Nira, watched him with cautious eyes, but there was a faint softness in her expression. For a long while, they simply stood there, separated by the glowing river, exchanging small words and gestures. Aaron tried to speak slowly, using simple sounds, while Nira replied in her own language. Neither understood fully, but both seemed willing to try. Aaron picked up a small stone from the ground and held it up. "Stone," he said, tapping it gently. Nira tilted her head, then said a word in her language. She touched her glowing markings, pointing to the stone, repeating the sound again. They repeated this with leaves, water, and even the stars above. Their voices filled the silence of the forest, weaving small bridges between their worlds. Every time Nira laughed softly at his clumsy attempts to mimic her words, Aaron felt his loneliness fading. The night deepened, and the forest glowed brighter around them, as if listening. For the first time, Aaron felt that this place was not just beautiful but alive with meaning. Eventually, Nira stepped closer, kneeling by the riverbank. She dipped her hand into the glowing water and the river lit up brighter around her. Then with a small gesture, she invited Aaron to do the same. Aaron knelt slowly and placed his hand into the cool water. The glow spread around his fingers, silver light dancing upward. He looked across at Nira and she smiled softly, her markings glowing a little brighter. It was a simple act, but Aaron felt it like a bond. Two strangers from two worlds touching the same light. When the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, Nira stood. She spoke softly, words Aaron could not understand, then gave a small nod. Slowly, she stepped back into the forest, her glow fading with the trees until she disappeared. Aaron sat there long after she was gone, staring at the rippling water. His heart was racing, his thoughts spinning. He whispered her name to himself. Nira. The loneliness that had weighed on him since landing was no longer the same. He was not alone here. There was someone who carried the forest's light. Someone who had spoken to him, someone who had smiled. As he walked back to his shuttle, the world around him felt different. The trees glowed brighter, the air felt warmer, and the silence no longer hurt. His steps carried a quiet joy, a spark of hope. He had come to study the forest, but now the forest had given him something more, not just beauty, not just wonder, but connection. And as he lay in his shuttle, staring out at the glowing trees, one thought filled his mind. Tomorrow night he would return. Tomorrow night, he would see her again. The days that followed were no longer ordinary for Aaron. His schedule of collecting samples, scanning plants, and recording data still continued, but his thoughts were never far from the glowing figure he had met by the river. The name lingered on his lips whenever he was alone. Nira. Every evening when the sun set and the bioluminescent forest began to awaken, Aaron would find himself walking toward the riverbank. And every time, as if guided by the same thought, Nira appeared. Sometimes she stepped out of the glowing trees with quiet grace. Other times she was already waiting by the water, her markings glowing faintly like soft patterns of stars. At first, their meetings were filled with careful silence and simple gestures, but slowly the distance between them began to shrink. They learned more words from each other, trading sounds and meanings like treasures. Aaron would point at the stars and say sky, while Nira answered with her word, a sound that carried music in it. He would stumble when trying to copy her, and she would laugh softly, the glow of her markings shifting into brighter tones. Aaron soon realized that the forest itself seemed to respond to Nira. When she sang softly, short, gentle notes that rolled from her lips like water, the plants around her glowed brighter, and the river carried the sound further. It was not just a forest of light, it was a living world that listened. One evening, Nira beckoned him to follow. For the first time, she led him deeper into the glowing woods. Aaron hesitated at first, glancing back toward his shuttle, but curiosity pulled him forward. He followed her steps carefully, the soft light of the forest guiding their path. As they walked, Aaron noticed how Nira moved with perfect ease. Every root, every stone, every glowing vine seemed familiar to her. She touched the trees lightly as she passed, and the markings on her skin shifted in rhythm, as though in conversation with the forest itself. Aaron felt clumsy in comparison, stumbling over roots and ducking too late under low branches. Nira glanced back at him, her eyes carrying a spark of amusement, and she slowed her steps so he could keep up. They reached a clearing where the trees opened to reveal a wide lake. The water shone with a deep blue glow, brighter than the river, and tiny glowing fish darted beneath the surface, leaving trails of silver light. Firefly-like insects floated above the water, adding soft green glimmers to the air. Aaron could hardly breathe. Nira knelt by the lake and touched the surface. The fish immediately gathered around her hand, glowing brighter as if greeting her. She looked at Aaron and motioned for him to try. Aaron crouched slowly, dipping his fingers into the cool water. At first nothing happened. Then one of the glowing fish swam closer, circling his hand before brushing against it. The glow spread softly across his fingers. Aaron's eyes widened in wonder. "Beautiful," he whispered. Nira smiled, though she likely did not know the word. She spoke in her language, her tone carrying warmth, and touched her chest. Aaron pointed at the glowing fish. "Fish," he said. Nira repeated the sound carefully, then gave her own word. They traded words again, building their fragile bridge of language. From that night onward, their lessons grew. Every evening, Nira taught Aaron something new about the forest. She showed him how certain plants glowed brighter when touched gently, and how others released soft music when brushed by the wind. She demonstrated how vines carried tiny drops of glowing nectar that could be eaten for energy. Aaron, in turn, told her about Earth. He described tall cities where lights came not from nature but from machines. He spoke of oceans that glimmered under moonlight, mountains that touched the clouds, and deserts where the ground glowed with heat instead of light. Nira listened with wide eyes, her markings shifting colors as if reflecting her wonder. Communication was slow and often filled with mistakes, but both were patient. When Aaron failed to say her words correctly, Nira repeated them gently, never laughing harshly, only smiling softly. When Nira struggled to form human sounds, Aaron encouraged her with quiet nods and gestures. The forest around them seemed to approve, glowing brighter during their lessons, humming softly as if sharing in their efforts. One night, Nira brought Aaron to a giant tree that towered above all others. Its trunk was so wide that 10 humans holding hands could not circle it. The bark glowed faintly with silver lines spiraling upward like a galaxy. Nira placed her hand on the trunk and closed her eyes. Aaron watched as the glow of her markings brightened, pulsing with the tree's light. When she opened her eyes, she motioned for him to try. Aaron hesitated, then placed his hand on the tree. At first he felt nothing but rough bark. Then slowly warmth spread through his hand, traveling up his arm. It was faint, but it was there, a gentle thrum, almost like a heartbeat. He looked at Nira in awe. She smiled and spoke a word that he could not understand, but her expression told him everything. This was the heart of the forest. Aaron realized then that Nira was not just someone who lived here. She was a part of this place, connected to it in ways he could barely understand. To her, the forest was not a resource or a mystery to be studied. It was family, friend, and home. As the nights turned into weeks, Aaron found his bond with Nira deepening. He no longer came to the forest only for research. He came for her. The loneliness that had once weighed on him was replaced with anticipation. Each day felt longer, waiting for the sun to set so he could walk the glowing paths again. One evening, while sitting together by the river, Aaron told Nira a story from Earth. Using simple words and gestures, he described how sailors once followed the stars to find new lands, guided by light across dark oceans. Nira listened intently, her head tilted, her eyes shining with curiosity. When he finished, she spoke softly, touching the glowing markings on her skin. Aaron did not understand her words, but he felt her meaning. She too was a star in the darkness. The forest hummed around them, as if echoing the truth of her thought. Aaron knew there were limits between them. He was human, she was not. He belonged to the stars, she belonged to the forest. Yet when they sat together, watching the river shimmer, those differences felt small. One night, as they stood beneath the giant glowing tree, Nira reached out her hand. For a moment Aaron hesitated, uncertain, but then he placed his hand in hers. Her skin was warm, the light of her markings soft against his own. They stood there in silence, hand in hand, the forest glowing brighter around them. It was not just learning words anymore, it was learning trust. Aaron realized then that the bioluminescent forest had given him something greater than knowledge. It had given him a companion, a friend, and perhaps something even more. And though he could not say the words yet, his heart whispered them quietly every time he looked at her. I am glad you are here. The bond between Aaron and Nira grew stronger with every passing night. Their words became clearer, their gestures smoother, and their silences more comfortable. The forest no longer felt like a lonely dream to Aaron. It felt like home because Nira was there. But not everyone in the forest shared the same warmth. One evening, when Aaron followed Nira to the glowing river, he noticed something different. Nira was quiet, her markings dimmer than usual. She glanced behind her often as if she feared being watched. Aaron asked softly, Nira, what is wrong? But she only shook her head. That night they did not stay long. Nira left early, disappearing into the glowing trees, leaving Aaron with a restless heart. The next evening he returned again, waiting for her by the silver water. When she arrived, her steps were slower and her eyes carried worry. Before Aaron could speak, 3 more figures appeared from the shadows. They were like Nira, tall and graceful, their skin carrying glowing markings. But their lights were sharper, brighter, as if charged with emotion. They moved with purpose, surrounding Nira and looking at Aaron with suspicion. Aaron froze, unsure of what to do. His first instinct was to raise his hands, palms open, to show he meant no harm. Nira spoke again, her tone softer now, as if pleading. After a long silence, the tallest figure gave a low sound, almost like a sigh, then gestured sharply toward Aaron before turning back into the forest. The other 2 followed, their lights fading into the trees. Nira stood still for a moment, then turned to Aaron, her face filled with both relief and sadness. She touched her chest and whispered something softly. Aaron did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning in her eyes. It is not easy for them to trust. That night they sat by the river in silence. Aaron wanted to comfort her, but he knew no words could bridge such deep differences quickly. All he could do was stay, showing her that he was not leaving. The following nights were quieter. Sometimes Nira seemed distant, her glow dimmer, as if weighed down by thoughts. Aaron noticed her hesitation but did not press her with questions. Instead, he tried to show through small actions that he meant no harm. He brought simple tools from his shuttle. Nothing dangerous, only harmless items like a small light, a water filter, and a solar panel. He showed her how humans created light not from their bodies but from machines, how they made clean water, how they captured power from the sun. Nira's eyes widened with curiosity, and slowly her glow brightened again. She repeated his words, pointing at the tools, giving him her own words for light, water, and energy. For every gift he showed, she responded with a gift of the forest, glowing fruits that tasted like honey, vines that could be woven into strong cords, leaves that healed small cuts. It was a trade, not of things but of trust. But still, the challenge remained. Aaron could feel it whenever the forest grew too quiet, whenever shadows shifted behind the glowing trees. Nira's people were watching. They were waiting, uncertain if the human was friend or threat. One evening, as Aaron walked with Nira toward the giant glowing tree, they heard voices in the distance. The tones were sharp, filled with anger. Nira froze, her markings dimming quickly. She whispered something to Aaron and motioned for him to hide behind a cluster of glowing roots. Aaron crouched low, holding his breath as 3 more figures entered the clearing. Their glow was fierce, flashing in angry bursts. They spoke quickly, their gestures sharp. Aaron could not understand the words, but he felt the heat of their distrust. Nira stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. She spoke with hands raised, her glow soft and steady. She pointed toward Aaron's hiding place, then placed her hand on her chest. The others shouted back, their light flashing wildly, but Nira did not back down. Aaron's chest tightened. He wanted to step out to show himself, to prove he was not hiding in fear. But he also knew that if he did, it might only make things worse. So he waited, heart pounding as Nira defended him. At last, the 3 figures turned away, muttering in low tones as they left the clearing. Nira's glow dimmed with exhaustion. She walked back to Aaron, her shoulders heavy. Aaron stepped forward and placed his hand gently over his chest, the gesture he always used when he meant friend. He whispered, "Thank you, Nira." She gave him a tired smile, her glow faint but still warm. That night, as they sat beneath the giant glowing tree, Aaron felt the weight of what had happened. Nira was risking much to see him. Her people did not trust humans, perhaps with good reason. To them, he was a stranger, a danger, a reminder of how easily the balance of their forest could be broken. Aaron realized then that this bond was not just about learning or sharing. It was about proving. He would have to prove that humanity was not a force of destruction, but of connection. He would have to show, not with words but with actions, that he respected this world and its people. He looked at Nira, her eyes glowing softly in the dark, and made a quiet promise to himself. I will not let them fear me. I will show them who I am. And as the forest glowed gently around them, the challenge before Aaron became clear. His heart was no longer just longing for company. It was longing for trust. The sky above the glowing forest grew restless. Thick clouds gathered, dark and heavy, swallowing the gentle shimmer of the moon. For days the air had been tense, the winds sharper, and the forest's rhythm unsettled. Aaron had seen storms before, but he could tell this was something far more dangerous. The very trees seemed to tremble, their glowing leaves flickering as though whispering warnings to anyone who would listen. Aaron stood outside his small base at the edge of the forest, staring upward. Lightning cracked in the distance, briefly painting the sky in pale white light. He felt his chest tighten. He had learned enough from Nira to know that the storms here were unlike those on Earth. The energy, the rain, even the winds held a strange force. This was not only a test of survival for him, but also for those who had always called this forest home. He thought of Nira and her people. If the storm grew stronger, their homes among the glowing groves could be swept away. He could not stand by and watch disaster consume them. Inside his base, Aaron worked quickly. He checked the equipment he had brought from his ship: tools, power cells, shields meant for emergencies. His supplies were limited, but perhaps he could adapt them to protect the village. He had done many things humans called impossible before, and now he needed to do it again. As the wind howled louder, he packed what he could and set off into the glowing forest. His boots splashed against the damp ground, and each step was a fight against the rising gusts. The forest, usually alive with gentle lights and soft songs, now groaned under the weight of the storm. Bioluminescent plants bent and flickered, their lights dimming as rain began to fall in heavy sheets. Aaron pushed forward. His thoughts were on Nira, her smile, her curiosity, the way her voice carried calmness even in uncertain moments. The thought of her facing this storm without help filled him with determination. When he reached the village, chaos had already begun. The tall woven shelters swayed dangerously in the wind. The glowing threads that bound their homes together flickered and snapped under pressure. Families clung to one another, trying to secure their belongings as the storm threatened to tear everything apart. Aaron spotted Nira near the center of the village. She was helping children move toward a stronger shelter built against a cluster of large trees. Even in the storm, her glow pulsed softly like a steady flame refusing to die out. "Nira," Aaron shouted, his voice nearly stolen by the roar of the wind. She turned, her eyes wide with both surprise and relief. She ran toward him, rain striking her face, her luminous markings flickering like lightning across her skin. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice shaking with the storm. "I couldn't stay away," Aaron replied firmly. "I have tools. I can help." Nira's people looked at him with mixed feelings. Some frowned, distrust still heavy in their eyes. Others, desperate and afraid, seemed to hope he had answers. Aaron knew this was the moment that would decide whether they saw humanity as a threat or as a friend. "Listen," Aaron called out, raising his voice so all could hear. "I know you do not trust me, but I can protect you. The storm is stronger than anything you have faced before. I have ways to shield your homes, to keep the children safe. Let me help you, please." The villagers exchanged worried glances. Their leader, an elder with silver patterns glowing faintly across her arms, stepped forward. Her expression was stern, her gaze fixed on Aaron. "You speak of protection," she said, her voice calm even as the storm raged. "But how can we believe you will not bring more harm?" Aaron's chest rose and fell. He could not offer promises with empty words. He could only show them through action. "Do nothing and the storm will destroy everything," he said simply. "Give me a chance and I will fight with you. If I fail, then judge me as you wish. But if I succeed, let it be proof that humans are not here to take but to give." The elder studied him for a long moment. Then she gave a short nod. "Do what you must." Aaron wasted no time. He dropped his pack and pulled out energy shields, small portable devices designed to repel extreme weather and emergencies. Normally they were used to protect equipment during landings, but now he needed to use them to save lives. He set the first device in the center of the village and activated it. A faint shimmer spread outward, forming a translucent barrier against the wind and rain. The villagers gasped as the storm's force lessened within its reach. "Help me place these around your shelters," Aaron called. Nira was at his side instantly. Together they planted the devices at key points, creating overlapping shields. Others soon joined, their suspicion giving way to desperate cooperation. The forest roared, lightning split the sky, and rain poured down in relentless waves, but within the shimmering dome of energy, the village held firm. Hours passed like this, wind howling, rain crashing, thunder shaking the ground. Aaron worked tirelessly, adjusting the shields whenever they faltered, repairing them when the storm's strength pushed too hard. His arms ached, his clothes clung to his body, and exhaustion tugged at his mind, but he refused to stop. Every time he felt his strength fading, he looked at Nira. Her presence gave him courage. She was soaked, her glow dimmed by exhaustion, but she never left his side. At last, as dawn neared, the storm began to weaken. The wind slowed, the rain eased, and the forest's glowing rhythm slowly returned. The shields, cracked and flickering, finally powered down, their energy nearly drained. But the village still stood. The shelters, though battered, had not been destroyed. And most importantly, every life had been saved. The villagers emerged cautiously, their faces filled with awe. They looked at Aaron not as an outsider, but as someone who had fought beside them. Children pointed at him with wide eyes, whispering with wonder. The elder approached once more, her gaze softer now. "You risked everything for us," she said quietly. "Why?" Aaron looked around at the village, then at Nira. His voice was tired but steady. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because humanity's strength is not in taking, but in protecting what matters. And because I could not let her face this storm alone." Nira's breath caught at his words. Her eyes glimmered, her glow slowly brightening again. For a long moment she said nothing, then softly she placed her hand against his, her markings glowing warmly at the touch. The elder studied them both, then gave a slow nod. "Perhaps humanity has more light within it than we believed." That day marked a change. Suspicion was not gone, but seeds of trust had been planted. The villagers saw Aaron not as a threat, but as someone who had stood with them when the storm came. Later, as the forest settled and the glowing plants lifted their light once more, Aaron sat with Nira at the edge of the village. They were both exhausted, but the quiet peace after the storm wrapped around them like a gift. "You were reckless," Nira said softly, though there was no anger in her voice. "Maybe," Aaron admitted with a faint smile, "but I would do it again." She looked at him for a long moment, her glow reflecting gently on his face. "You carry storms within you, Aaron," she whispered, "but you also carry light." And for the first time, Aaron felt not like a stranger in the glowing forest, but like he belonged. A dangerous storm brews over the forest, threatening both Aaron's base and Nira's people. When disaster strikes, Aaron risks his life to protect her village, using human ingenuity and courage to shield them from harm. His actions surprise Nira's people, planting the first seeds of trust. Nira herself begins to realize that his presence is not just chance, it feels like destiny. Under the radiant glow of the forest after the storm, Nira and Aaron finally speak openly of their feelings. Both admit the longing that has grown between them, a longing that neither distance nor difference can erase. In the stillness of the glowing forest, their hearts align, and even the bioluminescent trees seem to shine brighter in response. Though challenges remain, Nira's people accept Aaron as a friend of the forest. He decides not to leave but to build a bridge between his world and hers, one of respect, wonder, and love. Together, Nira and Aaron walk hand in hand through the glowing forest, their bond a symbol of what humanity and alien kind can achieve when they choose love over fear.